What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today, we are going to discuss the ongoing dilemma plaguing the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving. While Kyrie was gone, the Nets looked unstoppable. Since his return, they have dropped 2 straight games to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to discuss and debate how Brooklyn can get back to showcasing their horde of talent moving forward. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick. Well, it looks like, there's been some hiccups with the dream working in Brooklyn with James Harden and Kevin Durant and now Kyrie Irving added to the mix. On paper, this might be one of the greatest teams ever assembled. In actuality, the only times that they have been put together, they dropped 2 straight games to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have about 3 top-tier centers on their roster and a bunch of guys who are learning what a basketball looks like. So, can you explain this to me? Why this is happening and what they can do to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, we got to look at it for what it is, right? Kyrie just came back. Kevin Durant's still not playing. He sat out against the Cavs to get some rest. So we really haven't seen all 3 on the court together at the same time. But I think what we need to talk about is really what can Kyrie do to make it work, right? We saw early on James Harden and Kevin Durant, they rekindled that fire just like they did back in OKC, and they were putting it right back together. Now Kyrie's got to figure out a way where he can work with them and be a teammate with them, not just another playmaker. And I think where it starts is he needs to learn he's not the only person on the team. He's been used to that. He's always wanted to be in the spotlight ever since he left the Cavs. And I think that now that he's surrounded by other studs, he needs to humble himself. He needs to take a step back, realize he doesn't need to do it all. He doesn't have to have the ball in his hands with the game on the line, with time running out. He needs to just feed the ball, be a point guard. Feed the ball to James, feed the ball to Kevin Durant. You don't need to be the biggest scorer every single night. I think that Kyrie Irving really needs to just take a step back and lessen his role. Less is more in this situation.
All right, so let me ask you a question. Who's the best player on this team?
Kevin Durant.
So if we have the best player being forced to take a back seat to 2 other players, don't you see that as being an issue? I mean, Kyrie Irving plays a lot of me ball, what I call me ball, right? James Harden plays a lot of me ball. How is that going to work when the best player isn't even touching the ball until he's the 3rd option?
Right, I mean, but he is the on-ball guard. He is going to facilitate. Kyrie.
Okay, but so is James Harden if he wanted to be. So is Kevin Durant if he wanted to be.
Right,
but my contention is that Kyrie Irving, in the 2 games against the Cavs, scored 37 and 38 points, which is great. That's phenomenal. And then if you look at James Harden, 21 and 19. Okay, not his normal numbers, definitely down from when he was playing with KD. And then KD did play the first game against the Cavaliers. He had 38 points. And they lost that game in double overtime, but they lost that game. All 3 players scored over 20 points. 21, 38, and 37. Those were the 3 numbers that carried this roster.
Look, I mean, let's look at other... If we look back at other stud teams in the past, none of them started out hot and just stayed that way. They all had to build up chemistry. James Harden just got here. They haven't even played together They haven't been on the court at the same time together yet. They got to work through these things. They have a rookie head coach and Steve Nash. Like, they need to figure this out. It's going to take time.
I'm glad you brought up Steve Nash because you're talking about a rookie head coach that Kyrie Irving doesn't even respect. And that comes from himself. He didn't want Steve Nash to be hired as the head coach. He was hired anyway. And just to show you, he doesn't return his phone calls. He doesn't talk to him outside of the facility. I'm not saying they have to be best friends, but to make this entire thing work, Kyrie's going to have to check his ego at the door. I think that is a huge part of this entire process. Kevin Durant is, it's not arguable, is the best player on this roster.
Yeah,
James Harden is number 2. Kyrie Irving needs to be the facilitator. He needs to take a step back when it comes to scoring. He needs to be more of a leader, and he needs to check his ego at the door. He needs to start following suit. And I know that's not who Kyrie Irving is, so that begs the question, can this thing actually work?
Yeah, I think it can. And if we go back to his comments right before he returned to the Nets after his sabbatical, he said, "Look, I was going through some stuff. I'm now focused. I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to rejoin this team." And they embraced him. They let him back in. And guess what? He went off. He had a big game for them when Kevin Durant was out. When Kevin Durant comes back in, he knows that he's going to get him the ball. He's going to get James Harden the ball. They need to work on relationships together. They have not had a lot of time together. And I think Kyrie realized that. He understands the situation. And I think he's going to start working in that more of a facilitator role and stop being the me ball guy he has throughout his career. He's going to look back on his days with LeBron and say, "Hey, what did I do to make that work? How did we work so well together? All right, let's take those skills and let's apply it to this situation because it's the exact same." And he made that work. He was able to win a ring.
Same.
He was able to win a ring with the Cavs. I think that he can do it again with the Nets.
It's not the exact same. Kyrie Irving is different than the Kyrie Irving that he was with the Cavs. LeBron James back then is not what Kevin Durant is now, and he sure as hell didn't have a James Harden as another option on that team. So you take a look at that roster, you cannot tell me this situation is anywhere close to what he was dealing with in Cleveland. Kyrie Irving right now has a lot to answer for. And listen, I hope that his mental health stays up. I hope he stays healthy. I want him to succeed, but I also want him to be mature, and I want him to understand that this roster relies on him taking a back seat and understanding that he's going to have a renewed role in this offense. It's not going to be score first. It can't be 100% of the possession. I'm handling the ball. That's what we saw he did in Cleveland. That's what we saw he did in Boston. A lot of those issues that he came with come from the fact that he refuses to pass the ball. And it's crazy to think from a guy who averages almost 6 assists a game, but he needs to double that number if this team wants to be successful. I think that James Harden and Kevin Durant need to touch the ball way more than Kyrie Irving does.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, Harden and KD are by far the better shooters. Kyrie is, I mean, he's great at driving to the basket, and I think that's going to continue to be what he does. He's not going to have to take 25 shots a game. He's going to have to take 10 to 15 shots a game. And the rest of the time I wouldn't be surprised if he's averaging 10 to 15 assists a game by the end of the season. I would not be surprised because that's the way it's going to work. And I think once they get on the court together and they figure it out, he's not going to just break that chemistry because he feels like he wants to score more that game. He's going to continue to do what is working and what's winning them games. Once they get the chemistry figured out, there is no reason they should be losing games, and I don't believe they will lose most of their games. I think they're going to reach a point where they're just extremely red hot, and they're the team to beat in the East.
I'm cautiously optimistic about this team. I still have a lot of questions. I still haven't seen a lot from Kyrie Irving to basically take my concerns and shove them onto a shelf and say, I don't have to worry about those anymore. I have a lot of questions. I think we should revisit this toward the end of the season. Take a look back at the Nets and see if they were able to actually get it done or if this was an absolute bust. But nonetheless, there's a big question mark surrounding this team right now, and I think it all hinges on the back of Kyrie Irving.
It definitely does, and he's going to have to work on his chemistry with the two of them and the rest of the team. I mean, they've all have to work in unison. First team, second team, they need to make sure they're on the same page, and that all falls on Steve Nash. He's got to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that'll be all for now. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Over 75% of you are still not subscribed. Please consider subscribing. It'll help us out a ton. That'll do it for now. Thank you very much. Peace and love.